I was back there and they said, "Have fun." And I'm not sure that that's quite the right words to be in front of a bunch of journalists having fun. But I just wanted to talk to you today about where we're heading. As you know, there's been lots of conversations about police accountability, a lot of conversations about a bonding and tax bill and some spending, and then a few other bills. And so I'll take those first, and then I want to talk about what we're going to do towards education. So on the police accountability, there's been a long period of time of working on this. We never stopped working on this, whether we're in session or out of session. That's something that we all felt was important. I've talked to all kinds of people, all kinds of perspectives, and that's been extremely helpful. At this point, I would say that there is a tentative agreement, but we are still working through the language. That's always the tricky part. But as far as what should be in the bill for points of reference, I think there's agreement there. And so that's what we'll be working on throughout the rest of the day. But that's been nonstop. And then on the rest of the bills, I would say we're about as close as we can be, and it's just a matter of whether the House will pass those bills or not. They have to originate in the House. There are a few provisions that we have not agreed to. I think for them to pass, they will have to work with House Republicans to make that happen. And so that part we're going to have to wait and see, but it's basically today or it's not going to happen. And that has been the case for since the beginning of session, or session ended till now. It's either there or it's not, and you're going to have to talk to the House about whether that's going to happen or not. So I think we'll have police accountability. We'll see what the House does in regards to the bonding and tax bill that I believe will be together. I think they will take a vote, but again, you have to talk to them. So those are the big pieces that we've always been talking about. And then something else that we want to continue to move forward. We will have a bill and a resolution today for education. We absolutely think that schools need to be open. That there should not be kids not in classrooms. And so that will be our resolution, and then we will have a bill that provides money for teachers to make sure that they're safe when they're in there teaching the kids. We know that I've heard enough stories about some teachers that what if they're a vulnerable class? Well, we need to figure out a way to protect them too. We appreciate what the teachers are doing. But we think school is absolutely essential for our kids, and we've got to figure out a way to get them in the classroom and to provide resources for our teachers to make sure that they're safe. So that's what I expect to happen today, but I think by midnight tonight, if you'll know what was going to get done or not get done, and it is our plan at this point to be done by midnight. Bill.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. So you're going to adjourn sine die at midnight tonight?
Well, that's that.
7 tomorrow morning, or what's your?
Yeah, I mean that's our plan. I don't know what's going to happen in the House, so there could be a variable that I do not see. But I think if a bonding bill doesn't happen tonight, it's not going to happen. So that is our plan at this point.
Senator Kowalski, is it possible then that you're saying that there could be a vote and approval on a breakthrough agreement on police reform separately and completely separate from the bonding bill?
Yes. Yes, we have not linked the two. On the police accountability bill, I think all interested parties, either will sign off or not. So that means some of the groups that wanted the reforms, working with the police groups to actually have something that I think Minnesota can be proud of. We were very adamant that it couldn't be anything that we felt defunded or dismantled the police, and none of that is in there. But there are a number of provisions that I think all sides would say these are changes that should happen.
Senator, the two bills, I saw that you drafted a bill Friday that appeared to be the police reform bill. It looked pretty much identical to what the Senate had done in special session 1. The House has done precisely the same thing. Where has all this compromise taken place, and under what circumstances?
Well, there's been a lot of conversations, myself speaking with the Speaker and Representative Mariani and Representative Moran and Senator Limmer, trying to find that place where we can agree where language matters. And so that's, every day since then. So, yep.
Are you still okay with linking the tax bill and the bonding bill? And are you still comfortable with the language in the bonding bill that the House apparently is going to pass today?
So the question is, am I okay with linking the bonding and tax bill? And the tax bill's tax relief. Frankly, I'd rather have the tax bill by itself, but I believe it will come out of the House combining the bonding and tax bill. There are a few provisions in the bonding bill we did not agree to, and that I think will either be sorted out in the House or it won't go through. Just some little language related to light rail and some other things that they're minor, but they are important. So, yeah.
What should we expect to see with the police reform bill? Are you going to go forward with the bill that you put out, or is it going to have different language? And what's going to be in it that's not in your bill that was dropped on Friday?
Well, stay tuned. I just want to make sure that the language is correct before we talk about that. But it will originate in the House as well. So, yes.
On the bonding bill, are you in agreement on a bonding bill with the House? And is it just the Republican House minority that's an outlier here?
Well, I think the House has different factions that want different things that each side doesn't want, if that makes sense. And so they have to work out their disagreements over there. It's both the Democrats and the Republicans wrestling with what a bonding bill should look like. The Senate is just not as far apart on what we think. And so I think then when you combine it with tax relief that provides relief for small business owners and farmers and things like that, I think it becomes something that could happen here. But again, we have to wait to see what the House is going to do. It has to originate in the House. It either is going to happen today or it's not going to happen.
Leader Dowd just said at his own news conference, he poked a whole bunch of holes in both the bonding and the tax side of that bill. He said it's not full 179. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like how little money's being spent on the roads and bridges. He says it wasn't just House Democrats that cut his caucus out of negotiations. It was you guys too. Aren't you and him supposed to be on the same team?
Well, the Senate and the House are two very different bodies, and the majorities are responsible to actually put a bill together, which often requires more compromise than either side wants. There have been conversations with the minorities on the bonding bill, but the minorities never get as much say as the majorities when you're putting together a bill.
Senator, what should Minnesotans think if you all can't pass a bonding bill by midnight tonight?
Well, I think the number one thing I think they want us to get done right now is something with reform towards police accountability. And so I believe that will happen today, and the fact that all interested parties, I believe, will say that these were good steps to take, I think will be the story today. The bonding bill is there every year or every other year, and there are a number of years that we don't do it for whatever reason. The bonding bill is the only bill that requires more than just a simple majority. It takes both sides to agree in the House and in the Senate, and that's just a little more tricky. But we've been navigating to get one done, but it has to come from the House, and we'll just wait and see.
Senator, do you want to see some agreement on emergency powers come out of this as well?
So emergency powers, we've been asking the governor to give up his emergency powers. We think COVID is real. It's a real virus. It is dangerous, but we don't think we're any longer in an emergency stage. The governor disagrees, and so that has been our struggle, because we don't think he's done nearly as well when he's had all power versus when we've worked together. And so we'll keep pushing for that. I do know that the House has been working on some limited powers instead of COVID powers, and I don't know that there's an agreement on that. At this point, I know there's not an agreement. Whether there will be one or not could determine whether or not the bonding tax bill happens.
Mr. Leader, can you give us some idea, a few bullet points at least, on the police reform? Chokeholds in which you're moving
Yeah.
forward, warrior training ban?
Sure, I'll tell you, yeah. So chokeholds we agreed on. We have the language we agree on. Eliminating warrior training was another big thing that we agreed on. We agreed to have an advisory council under the post board that can bring more concerns to the post board. There's more than that, but that's just a teaser.
Are there police arbitration changes in there at all?
Last one, yes.
Felon voting's out, I assume.
Correct. I always said that we would not defund the police, we would not do felon voting, and we would not give the Attorney General more power than he already had. Those are all off the table, but we accepted a few other provisions. It's just trying to get that language right, which is always difficult, especially when we're navigating around COVID. It's all of our staff aren't here. We're trying to make it happen, and it's been a different, much tougher process.
You have an agreement with the speaker on those basic bullet points that you talked about?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
And that language that you have not yet agreed on yet, is that around violations for any of those? What is that?
Repeat one more time.
The language that you have not yet agreed upon for police reform, is that based around violations and how to act appropriately for that?
No, so we've agreed on the principle of what each provision should have. That's the most important thing, but it's actually seeing the actual language and making sure that lines up with the agreement. So there were many provisions where we were on one side and they were on the other side. Those are not agreement. It's when you say, yes, we both want to accomplish this one thing, and then how do we get now the language to line up with that? That's the part that's been difficult because staffing issues just are more complicated right now than they've ever been.
Their bill was so complex that they had a couple of different kinds of advisory councils.
Yeah.
The ones that you're talking about are not the citizens advisory councils that will be placed in the different cities with over 50 cops.
Yeah.
What's the advisory council you're talking about? How does that-
We have just one advisory council that we agreed to that will be under the post board, within the post board, that will bring advice to the post board.
Is it a citizen or is it a professional?
It's a combination of citizens, legislators, and police officers. Yep.
Senator, you met with family members of individuals who have died after police incidents. Did that change your mind at all? Can you tell us about those conversations?
So the question was, did I meet with family members of mothers in particular that lost loved ones as a result of police activities? I will say, yes, I did. I did that on 2 separate occasions, but for me personally, those were private meetings. But it's helpful to listen to all sides, and they make a compelling case for things that just really totally change their lives. And the one thing I'll say is I heard a lot of precious tears just from where they were coming from. But you have to take every piece of an issue, and that was one piece. And then you hear the stories from so many good police officers and the work they're doing, and you put that together, and that's how you get good legislation. I think there was a whole lot of listening going on, which is really, really important. Try to understand the why to what they want to do was very helpful for me personally.
That should do it for us, folks. Thanks.
All right, thank you.